Pacers were blown out by Philly last night. You saw that on TNT, but still sitting third in the Eastern Conference, 44 games into the season, thanks in large part to a healthy Victor Oladipo, who recently sat down with Roz Gold on Wood A.
Victor Oladipo is just a fantastic basketball player.
He had a breakout year last year for the Pacers, and he looks great here in the season already.
Oladipo to the rim.
Shake him up, Vic.
Here's Oladipo, 3 seconds.
Race up.
Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Victor Oladipo, this is your city.
What have you found it takes to bear the responsibility of being the leader and the face of this franchise?
A lot goes into it, you know what I mean? And too much is given, much is required. And I've been hearing that for like every day for the past year. It's been tough, man. You gotta know what to say and when to say it, but at the same time, you gotta listen. I think being a leader is something that you have to learn how to do. There are natural born leaders, but there's some aspects of leadership that are things that you have to continuously learn from the people you surround yourself with, from your teammates. For me, I'm learning that every day. I'm learning my teammates. I'm learning what they like, what they dislike, and just about their everyday life. And also with leadership comes sacrifice. Sacrifice for yourself, sacrificing your time, and doing whatever it takes to help your team win. And that's what I'm locked in and focused on.
You have a pretty balanced roster, a number of guys scoring in double digits. Does that balance kind of take the pressure off a little?
In general, yeah. I mean, it's hard to guard us. You can double me, but I'm throwing it to Domas, and Domas is throwing it to whoever else is open. Or I'm throwing it to Miles, and Miles is throwing it to whoever else is open, or they're shooting their shot. So we got a lot of depth, and we got a lot of good players who can make things happen. But I never had a lot of pressure on me to begin with. So whether they double me or not, I don't feel any pressure. I just got to go out there and play.
Has your team earned respect yet? What is the respect you feel your team deserves right now?
I mean, being with them every day, I believe we earn a lot of respect. We deserve a lot of respect, but I don't think guys give it to us, which is fine, you know. At the end of the day, everybody isn't going to respect you, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. Just focus on each other and continuing to get better. We know that we can play at a high level in this league. We know we can win at a high level in this league, and we just got to continue to keep proving it every day.
Mentioned the Pacers are third in the East right now, and as was discussed there, this is a deep basketball team. Victor Oladipo is obviously their best player. My question for you guys is this a better regular season team or playoff team? Because they don't necessarily have that superstar guy who scares you in a postseason scenario as good as Oladipo is.
I don't know if I agree with you about Oladipo. I think Oladipo is a guy that...
You think he's there?
I think he is a guy that in today's NBA, he's a problem in a playoff setting. And look, this is a league right now where you're either a super team or you're a team with quality depth and emerging stars that you're going to hope can carry you deeper into the postseason than they normally would. I think about Boston last year without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. They relied on a similar formula, quality depth as opposed to one or two superstars carrying you. Denver has a team to me right now that's built exactly like that. So I'm not as concerned about the top end of the Pacers roster. I'm more concerned about is their quality depth what it needs to be for them to have a sustained playoff run.
So it's interesting. I think people lose sight of how good they were in the playoffs last year.
They were good,
They lost to Cleveland in 7 games. But I thought it was the toughest series Cleveland had until they made it to the finals, quite frankly.
Agreed.
The Pacers are a team, because they have to be better than the sum of their parts and they have to be on the same page, to some degree, they have to outwork you all the time. And over the course of an 82-game year, that's really difficult. I don't think they have the kind of margin for error to be a high 50s win team. I don't think they can be a 60-win team in terms of their margin for error and their star power. But in terms of their ability to lock in and prepare for a playoff opponent, the number of guys they have on their team, to your point about quality depth, who have basketball IQ, grit and toughness, and are willing to sacrifice for the greater good, is incredible. And their best player, Victor Oladipo, doesn't care anything at all about anything other than winning basketball games. And that puts you in really good stead come playoff time. I think Nate McMillan and his staff will do a great job preparing for series. I think they're a more dangerous postseason team than they are regular season.
Interesting. Yeah, they do have really good depth. I don't disagree with that at all. Trade deadline's coming up next month. where should they be looking, if at all?
You know, it's interesting. I think the one thing for them, it's complicated with what they have. You don't have a lot of pieces there you can aggregate to go get another star-type player without sort of taking a step back in terms of how you really operate.
Yeah.
But they're a team that by design is going to overachieve. And that means all the pieces they have sort of have to fit together in lockstep. If I was going to bring in anything, and you could say this about any contender, I would want more veteran three-point shooting.
Yep.
Somebody who can actually make shots versus a good contest. But who doesn't want a 6'8" guy that can make threes?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think the same dilemma that the Pacers are going to have come trade deadline is one that's going to plague every other team around the league that's not the Warriors. And that is there one player out there that pushes us up to that very next level, whatever it is, if it's right,
and do they think they're good enough to get to that next level?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with a free agent summer coming up, Matt, where there's so many different, scenarios they could play out, I would imagine we're going to see a lot of teams very apprehensive about doing anything crazy because they know what could potentially be coming down the line. When things go haywire in the summer and if one player moves somewhere and it kind of sets the whole world on its axis, then we got an opportunity to do some things that we don't want to jeopardize at the trade deadline.
Well, to that end, though, Indiana's really interesting because they're not a team that's going to sit there and think they are a max free agent destination.
No. Right.
And they only have $60 million on the books for next year. So Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan have the ability to go into trade deadline right now, willing to potentially take some money into the future if it can be the right piece for them. And I'm going to throw out a name for you with no understanding of how they make the math work whatsoever.
Sure.
Mark Gasol, if he gets moved from Memphis, playing with that group of guys, playing with a big like Sabonis who knows how to play and can dribble, pass, and shoot, that would be a fascinating piece to put in there and to give Nate McMillan and see what he can do.
You talked about the Denver Nuggets zagging when everyone else is trying to zig. Indiana could definitely do that if Gasol's there with Turner or Sabonis on the floor with him. That would be
well,
really
and Turner can
scenario.
space off of Gasol and vice versa.
Absolutely.
They'd be able to be really elite defensively in the paint. Let's make it happen. I like it.
Sabonis is great off the ball. Gasol could.
And Indiana has already crashed the party in the Eastern Conference when we weren't expecting it. Nobody looked up and said, hey, there's going to be 5 teams in the East that you have to worry about in that top group, and Indiana's not the 5th team. Right now it's Boston. Right. So they gotta be very mindful of the fact that we talked about Golden State, and do you get worse before you get better with Boogie coming in? Well, if you make a move and you're one of these teams, does it set you back before it propels you forward? Right. And do you want to take that risk now when you're already in a really good position if you're Indiana?
If it propels you forward, because you never know. When
you don't know.
Roll the dice on these deals. Well, hopefully you have the day off Monday for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, which we have helpfully already planned for you. Wasn't that nice of us? A pair of NBA TV games,
did it.
Thunder and Knicks, Magic and Hawks, and then it's a TNT triple header. Pels, Grizz, Rockets, Sixers, and the Warriors in LA to take on the Lakers. Game time throughout the day, really, here on NBA TV, and then TNT takes over inside the NBA when the night ends. The new MVP ladder is out on NBA.com. Sekou has moved James Harden into the pole position, displacing the Greek freak. Joel Embiid has entered the picture as well at number 5. Care to explain yourself?
Yes, I would like to give you an 18-game explanation for why James Harden is now
I think I know where you're going with
number 1 on this list. Look, I think it would be disingenuous for anybody to look at the work of the reigning Kia MVP and not assume that he'd be anywhere but the number 1 spot. Harden's been fantastic. Under the circumstance, Griff, for him to play the way he has with as many different guys out of that rotation and lineup, let's give him his due. Mm-hmm. The coolest part about it is, and I wrote about it this week on NBA.com, is that twice James Harden has come up short in the MVP race because his narrative wasn't as good. He had numbers, but he came up second to Steph in 2015 and then second to Russell Westbrook, when both those guys had much more compelling narratives as to why they should win that award. Well, what better story could you have if you're James Harden than it's me by myself? All these guys are hurt. Capella's out. CP's gone. We were left for dead early in the year. We were 14th place, and now I'm on this unbelievable streak, and I'm leading us to all these different places. It'll be interesting to see if he can sustain it, but what a great turnaround for James Harden and the Rockets that's gotten him back into the mix in the MVP race.
42 points, 9 assists a game over those last 18 games.
Is that a lot? That seems like a lot.
That's a lot. That is a lot. I was one of the folks who voted for him in 2015. I was in the minority that season. I voted for him twice now, and the way that's going right now, I can't argue, because given the situation in Houston and the way they've were kind of left for dead by a lot of folks early on in the season, and the fact that they've gotten better in the absence of Chris Paul, that sort of screams MVP right now.
Well, it's fascinating. Their roster is the antithesis of the situation the Warriors find themselves in, right?
Right.
We started the show with too many mouths to feed in Golden State, and it's going to take some time. In Houston's situation, when Chris Paul comes back, that's going to make an impact on James's ability to be James. Right now, he gets to hold the ball for 18 seconds on the shot clock if need be and shoot every shot with impunity, and everyone on the floor with him knows that's okay. Sometimes it's easier to play that way free and easy. Now, having said that, what he's doing statistically, he's being this prolific, winning games against all of the best teams in the league. It's miraculous. It really is what he's doing right now. Nobody's ever done this.
The numbers are just mind-blowing. Every time we cite a statistic, it goes back to, like, Wilt Chamberlain, typically. I mean, Wilt Chamberlain's numbers skew everybody else's in NBA history. Every record that we try to split and come up with, we always come back, oh, yeah, Wilt did that 1,000 more times than this guy. But you go back that far, that's amazing.
But what Wilt didn't do was dribble and shoot step-back threes.
No,
right? So
or
he has
sidestep threes.
become the most amazing, difficult shot maker, and he makes it look really easy.
Right.
So the sustainable thing you talked about, he is taking shots that for him don't require a great deal of effort quite often. So it is fascinating to see that he's been able to keep this going. I'm not sure he couldn't keep this going. It's just that when there's more mouths to feed there, it changes the dynamic a little bit.
Well, in the context of the MVP race, to me, is, I think, something that people always forget about is it's not just you and how you're playing. It's the other guys. Giannis has an unbelievable season going right now, in a season where his team has gone to another level. So you're going to have to contend with Giannis when the final votes are taken. Steph Curry, the two-time kid MVP, is playing like he wants to be a three-time kid MVP, doing historic things of his own. You add in Joel Embiid in the season he's having. Oh, Kawhi Leonard in Toronto, that's right, they're number one. You know what I mean? There's all these other guys, and I don't even want to bring up the other guy that's sitting out right now in L.A., who the minute LeBron comes back, he immediately, burrows his way right back up into
Probably
the
start
mix.
making his case by returning and playing better basketball.
And a lot of people tell you that LeBron's absence and the struggles the Lakers have had enhances his MVP case, or should only serve to magnify the importance of having him in that lineup. So the entire landscape has all these different stories you could tell. And that's why I say it year after year. Your narrative oftentimes is what separates you at the end of the day. Everybody's going to have MVP numbers, but does everybody have a story that sounds as compelling to these voters? And I'm one of them. We all have had our hand in the vote at some point or another, Matt. What are we swayed by? The raw numbers, your impact, or a combination of those things, which usually means the narrative that's been weaved from the start of a season to the end. We knew Russ was going to win that MVP. Well, we talked about it the summer. The day Kevin Durant decided he was leaving Oklahoma City, we're like, if Russ goes out and has a monster season, he's going to be on everybody's mind for MVP. Well, he went out and averaged a triple-double.
Right.
Pretty easy to figure that one out. Now, to me, this was kind of anybody's season with LeBron going west. Giannis stepped into that void and, to me, really took off, in terms of his viability as a legitimate candidate. But James Harden is kind of flipping that now. He's kind of making that more difficult to do, because Giannis can't do it in a vacuum. He's doing it in a league where there are other guys who are having outstanding seasons as well.
Well, you guys being voters, and I am not, I'll ask you guys both a question then. What has to happen in Denver for Jokic to really get consideration? They're tied for the best record in the Western Conference.
He's on the list. I mean, he didn't make the top 5.
Right.
He's on the list.
In terms of the narrative, exactly how much more does he need to do before he's really in this conversation?
It's not what he needs to do to me.
Right.
But and this is a weird thing about the MVP voting, Matt. I don't know if you noticed this. you almost get penalized when you play on a team where there are other guys that play really well. Like, you know, there are people that would argue that Jamal Murray is Denver's catalyst and best player, even though we know Jokic is the guy that they run things through and is really the center of their team, literally and figuratively, in terms of how they operate.
Right.
So he's suffering from some of that, and I also think he's suffering from the fact that there are a lot of people who are still figuring out just how good he really is.
And how good they are.
I try to make myself less susceptible to the narrative by giving myself a pretty simple definition for the MVP, and that's the player most responsible for his team's very successful season. So in that context, Nikola Jokic is definitely in the conversation. It doesn't even matter necessarily if he's their absolute best player, but if he's the catalyst, if he's the linchpin to what they're doing and making it work, then to me he's absolutely in that conversation, and he should be at this point with their record.
Well, using that definition, if Houston's injury issues are going to continue, this should just be called the James Harden Award.
Absolutely.
Because what he's doing solo right now is unbelievable.
Unreal. Right, and if there were a vote today, that's where that's probably going, because in the context of all the injuries, this is a very successful season they're having right now, and without James Harden,
no question,
it wouldn't be a.
But this is exactly why he's in the number one spot this week, and it's a fluid list, obviously. But it's also the reason why, if you saw my email over the weekend about the MVP ladder, you'd be mortified, because some people, they're so.
How do I get on this email, Chip?
They're so down the rabbit hole for their particular guy. Anytime you start an email that says, well, listen, I know I'm just a fan of this guy, but. Well, the but is everything after the but is hard to digest.
Yeah.
But
you got to call me out on TV like this.
Sorry about that. The guy who's getting the most love from his ardent fan base right now is Russell Westbrook. You know, people want to know, well, how can you not have Russell Westbrook in the top 5? He's averaging a triple-double again.
Right.
And I'm like, this is when you have to divorce yourself from the raw numbers and really study how a guy's playing.
Sure.
Russ is struggling. Like, he is averaging a triple-double. But he's the worst high-volume shooter in the league right now.
Right.
And you look at his shooting numbers, which anybody that would weight this process, an MVP candidate, you can't ignore that. You can't ignore that. And the fact that he's got another guy on his team in Paul George, who's every bit the MVP of the Oklahoma City Thunder this year.
Yeah.
I
might even argue their defense is the MVP of the Oklahoma City Thunder.
And Paul George is on the list.
Than anything they do.
Paul George is in the top 10. Russ is not.
Right.
Which is, upsets quite a few of Russ's fans around the globe.
This segues very well to something else Sekou does, because he is now a one-man media conglomerate. And on his Hang Time podcast this week, he discussed Russell Westbrook and the Oklahoma City Thunder with Eric Horn from the Oklahoman.